welcome to Daily Debrief from People's Dispatch. I'm Pragya and today we talk about 5 years of the Rohingya refugee crisis, an update from the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty Review Conference, and OPEC hinting at lowering oil production. In our first story, we talk about the Rohingya refugee crisis. Millions of Rohingya refugees fled Myanmar in 2017 under brutal attack from the military. They continue to escape in groups. Most are sheltered in Bangladesh and some in India and other parts of South Asia. They live in makeshift camps with their status in doubt and often cruelly oppressed. Caught up in politics over religion or refugees, their lives are in limbo. The refugees want to work and rebuild their lives, but there has been little beyond hand-wringing about them in the Western press and governments. Let us talk to Abdul from People's Dispatch about their crisis. Abdul, can you describe what the Rohingya crisis is about?
Well, it is primarily a kind of ethnic conflict which has something to do with the Myanmar politics, where the ruling establishment at the time and their supporters unleashed violence against the minority Muslim community living in the border areas with Bangladesh and India, and what we call Rakhine state. And it has historically there has been instances of attacks and counterattacks in the past, but this was like a large-scale attempt, which UN in its report termed as attempt to genocide.
Right.
So in 2017, though there were attacks earlier also, and there were a smaller group of Rohingyas who fled the region earlier, but in 2007 it was a mass exodus, around 1 million, more than 7 lakh people or 700,000 people plus others in different batches migrated away from the region, fearing threat to their life, and their villages after they left were destroyed, burnt, and a lot of people, hundreds of thousands were killed also in that attack. Since then, these Rohingyas have been living throughout the world now. A large part lives in Bangladesh, but a section of them are also forced to live as refugees, not even recognized in some state as refugees, for example in India, and in other Arab countries like UAE and in other parts of the world. This particular crisis, we can say, is a result of the failure of the state, Myanmar state, and the government at the time to protect their own citizens and from whatever vigilante groups or the groups which basically claim to using state authority on behalf of the state authority. So whatever it is basically a result of a regional and ethnic hatred.
Right, Abdul. Abdul, why is it that this crisis is proving difficult to resolve since 2017?
Well, the Myanmar government, which was at the time Aung San Suu Kyi and all, they remained in constant denial of their complicity in that crisis, and despite the fact that the UN and other international agencies tried to mediate and try to kind of reconcile and basically pursue the refugees to go back, but the refugees did not want to go back, primarily because the state was, as I said before, was in constant denial about its role. So they were not confident enough about, even if Aung San Suu Kyi said that refugees can come back, they were not confident enough of about those insurances, what will happen to their life and their in Myanmar. After that, there was a coup, and now since 2019 onwards, what we have seen that the state, the junta there, is primarily involved in kind of regaining a set of legitimacy for itself, and it has unleashed oppression against all kinds of democratic forces in the country, and international community has imposed sanctions and so on and so forth. So at this moment, there is no political situation, you can say, where the refugees who are forced to live in inhuman conditions in Myanmar, in Bangladesh, where Bangladesh government, for obvious reasons, because Bangladesh is a rich country, it's overpopulated, and they claim that the refugees have created it is an economic burden for them. That's what the Bangladeshi government has claimed. And they have also kind of tried to force a section of refugees to go back, violating whatever international conventions has been in place. So since there is no, you can say, ground on which there can be an international negotiations between junta, there has been a stalemate on that particular front, and therefore the refugees are forced to live wherever they are. Meanwhile, in states like India, we have noticed that how again, because of the religious and other regions, the Rohingyas are not allowed to even have the minimum right a refugee is entitled to have. So today, the millions of Rohingyas are forced to live throughout the globe, primarily in Bangladesh, in South Asia, and there is, because of the stalemate, because of the political development in Myanmar, there has been no major political steps taken for kind of creating a situation where the refugees, who always, if you read the reports coming from those refugee camps, they always want to go back to their homes.
Right.
But they are not able to go because of the lack of any political development, a real confidence building negotiation.
Right, Abdul. Thanks a lot. And Abdul will be back with you. Iran's Foreign Minister Hossein Amir Abdullahian has criticized the ongoing Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty Review Conference for excluding Israel from calls to join the treaty. Israel is the only country in the Middle East with nuclear weapons but disallows nuclear inspectors or joining the NPT. Meanwhile, Iran and the United States are engaged in talks to revive the JCPOA, or the Iran nuclear deal, which the US unilaterally walked out of in 2018. If the negotiations succeed, it would mean a withdrawal of Western sanctions on Iran. We'll return to Abdul. Abdul, why does Iran demand that Israel join the NPT?
Israel is the only country in the region which, though not officially, this status is not official, but is the only country, it's well-known facts, it's well-known secret, that it has nuclear weapons. Israel has never denied it, the international claims that it has nuclear weapons, neither it has officially acknowledged it. And there has been a long demand from the region, from the larger Middle East region, which from Iran till North African countries, who wanted to create which is a rare thing, by the way, a nuclear-free zone.
Right.
There are many reasons, many attempts by international disarmament and non-proliferation movements to create such kind of nuclear-free zones. It has not been successful anywhere else. This is the only region where there is a strong consensus about building a nuclear-free zone. But Israel remains an exception. Since this is the only country which has nuclear weapons, therefore other countries cannot go ahead with the nuclear-free zone. Since Israel has hostile relations with its neighbors, and because of this occupation, there are many Arab countries, and including Iran, who have refused to have any kind of diplomatic dealings with Israel. Israeli government claims that whatever indirectly, that there at least, and that is one of the reasons, by the way, the lack of any international pressure for Israel to sign the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. So Iran has time and again proposed, and in this review conference also, in the beginning weeks, there was a discussion about the region, and all the countries had reiterated their demand for that that Israel should be forced, or Israel should be at least formally asked to sign the deal, which will eventually lead to the realization of the nuclear-free zone. That will also create a sense of security in the region. That's what the argument has been, and that will ultimately lead to a larger disarmament in the region.
Right.
So that is the basic on which Iran has been demanding that Israel should join the NPT.
Abdul, can you also talk about the implications for the region in a little more detail, and also Iran's negotiations with the other countries on the JCPOA?
Well, it seems whatever reports we are having here and there, it looks like that there is a positive development as far as the JCPOA is concerned. The last negotiations which happened in which Europeans had proposed a draft, there is by and large with minor adjustments, there is an agreement, it seems. It has not been announced formally because some last moment negotiations are still going on. So there is a hope that the deal will be announced soon, anytime. But as I said before, when it comes to the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, NPT, whether Israel signing it, as I said before, it will have a larger impact on the region, in the sense that this will lead to de-escalation in a lot of conflicts in the region. If you see, this region is one of the largest importers of weapons in the world. Saudi Arabia, UAE, Israel itself, then Iran and other countries have been involved in a kind of arms race, primarily because of the sense of insecurity which comes from occupation, of course, continued Israeli occupation of Palestine, and Israel being a power which threatens the existence of other countries because of its nuclear arsenal. Iran has been accused of trying to develop nuclear weapon,
right.
But it is a signatory of NPT, and the ruling establishment in Iran has repeated many times that they do not want to develop nuclear weapons. Their nuclear program is peaceful. Since it is a signatory, it will create a much more you can say conducive atmosphere in the region if the only country in the region which has the nuclear weapon also gives away that nuclear weapons and signs the nuclear deal. That will kind of, that entire sense of insecurity in the region, as I said before, would be reduced if there is a international pressure, persuasion, whatever you call it, towards Israel to basically sign the NPT.
Right, Abdul, thanks, and we'll be back with you in just another minute. Amid historic high energy costs in the European Union and the United Kingdom, there are signals OPEC Plus could cut oil output. The signals come from top crude oil exporter Saudi Arabia. Energy Minister Prince Abdul bin Salman told the media that the trigger would be oil price volatility and low liquidity. Interestingly, US President Joe Biden met bin Salman last month, scouting for fuel beyond Russian oil and gas. As energy costs zoomed since US sanctions on Russia, Biden had hoped for more oil production in West Asia. This appears not to be coming true, and instead Turkey, Iran and Russia met up in Tehran recently to discuss Russian investments in oil and gas in Iran. Abdul is here to tell us more. Abdul, it seems the sanction on Russia are really having an effect. They're having an effect on the European countries. Can you just tell us what's going on here?
Well, if we go by the reports in the media, the oil prices in Europe are touching around $500 per barrel,
right,
which is insane, if we are allowed to use that word. And this is happening at the time when there is surplus production in many countries. For example, Iran, Venezuela, then there is Russia, which has enough production. Despite that, there is high prices, and we know the reason. The reason is the Europeans have themselves decided not to buy or quote unquote reduce their dependence on Russian energy. And now the people are paying the price. So the high prices by the Europeans are not the only one who are suffering from this.
Right.
There are different parts of the world, including the third world countries in Asia, in Africa, in Latin America, who are seeing a kind of unprecedented rise in the prices of energy, which is also affecting indirectly the prices of other essential commodities like food prices. So all of this has direct relationship with the kind of policy which Europeans have been following vis-a-vis Russia. And I think this will further escalate if what we are hearing, that Saudis are also basically trying to persuade the OPEC countries to reduce the production. Their claim is the prices which were higher few months back has now, there is a trend of them going down, and therefore there is a possibility that they will fall further. They want to avoid that thing. They want to avoid because a lot of their economy is based on the high prices of oil. We know that Saudi Arabian economy, which suffered a lot during, like most other countries during the COVID, has recovered recently primarily because of the high prices of oil. Now Saudi Arabia and other OPEC countries are scared that if the prices continue to remain, follow the trend, their economy would suffer. And of course, they do not want to do that, and that's why they are also proposing a cut in the production. It would mean that there will be further crisis. The Europeans may suffer further rise, which is already unprecedented, and other countries too. No country will be immune from the further rise in the prices of oil.
Right, Abdul. Abdul, what also explains what could be the regional implications of this? Because the US has tried to up the production, but they're not getting what they wanted.
Well, this is a complete failure of Biden administrations. In fact, we were talking about Europeans' policy towards Russia. It is primarily the US policy towards Russia, which Europeans are forced to follow because of the strange set of ruling establishments in different European countries who have compromised their own national interest to and surrendered it to the US diktats. Biden went to Saudi Arabia hoping, though he denied it in public, but that was one of the basic reasons of his visit to Saudi Arabia, to persuade Saudis to increase the oil production. We know that Saudi Arabia is the only country in the entire OPEC grouping which can change the overall supply of oil in the world, which can have impact on the prices of oil because it has the surplus capacity to produce extra oil. Knowing this, Biden went to Saudi Arabia. Saudis did not commit anything. And now, few weeks down the line, what we see that Saudis are basically proposing cut, and they are supported by UAE, they are supported by Sudan, they would be supported by Russia. Russia has also proposed a cut in production. If that, by the way, Russia is part of OPEC Plus initiative. So if this happens, this will be a further blow to the international community, and a further realization that how flawed Biden's foreign policy has been, not only in Europe, but also in the West Asia, in the Middle East, where they had been historically playing a much more significant and much more vibrant role. Now they have basically Saudi's decision is a sign that the influence of US, which is on decline in West Asia.
And that would also explain why Iran, Turkey and Russia decided to meet right after Biden's visit.
Exactly. That is their attempt to kind of fill that vacuum which has been created which is being created because of the declining influence of US in the region.
Thanks, Abdul. It was good to have you here. And that's all we have for you today. Thank you for watching Daily Debrief. Do come back to us tomorrow. And for more updates like this, please visit our website, peoplesdispatch.org, and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.